Hi everyone, it's Caitlin from Really Big Plant. Thank you so much for joining me. For today's video, we're gonna do some repotting and some sprucing. I wanna show you what is probably the most exciting plant to me in my collection right now, which is right behind me, and we're gonna start with that. I want to talk about prayer plants a little bit. We're gonna do a little repotting and pruning, and I have some fruit trees, some indoor fruit trees that are so exciting that I wanna show to you. They're like my obsession right now, and we're gonna head on over into my dining room area over there. Let's just get into it.
Really big plant.
Okay, so I've got this little area set up over here, and behind me, I've got this plant here, which I don't know if you can see from there how special it is. I'm gonna pick it up and show it to you. Do you see this variegated leaf? Okay, so this is a variegated Thaumatophyllum bipinnatifidum, also known as the philodendron celloum. So it is a member of the aroid family, and it grows in a really, really interesting way. So this is a pretty common houseplant and outdoor plant, at least in my area in California. I think it's grown pretty commonly in warm areas outdoors. Not the variegated version, but the regular version. I have a couple of different Thaumatophyllum bipinnatifidums, which is this plant, but none of them are variegated except for this one. This plant has these beautiful lobed leaves. I love the shape of the leaves on this particular type of Thaumatophyllum. I think that they're just so fancy looking, so whimsical and also tropical at the same time. As they develop and grow more mature, when the leaves fall off, their leaves leave behind a scarring pattern on the trunk that, in my opinion, looks so beautiful. And so this is a really special plant because the variegated version of this Thaumatophyllum is not something that you can reproduce from seed. It's a spontaneous mutation of the plant cells that results in them having these white patches, sort of like on an alba monstera, where the only way to duplicate this plant is to propagate individuals that have variegation. I ordered this from an international seller over a year ago now. I unfortunately didn't end up really talking about it too much because the seller started harassing. Anyway, it was sent to me as a top cutting of a very mature plant, which is why the stem that you see here is so thick. Normally when you grow Thaumatophyllums, if you get one that's around this size, it's not gonna have a stem that's this big. This, I think, must have been the top cutting of a really huge plant. This stump is like everything that you see is the entirety of the stump. It does not go below ground at all. It's like cut off on the bottom, so it's flat, and then it's got this like little dome, like it sort of looks like a little turtle shell in the shape that it's in right now. And then it's got these like big roots sticking out, but actually only one of them has active roots growing from the bottom of it, from this thing, and this goes into the pot there, and it's got like a whole root network inside. But it is a little bit precarious because if something were to happen to this root here, it doesn't have any other roots. So this whole plant just keeps me nervous all the time. I've got it tied down into the pot here using some wire wrapped around its roots and the base of the stem because it's very forward heavy. And then I've got a layer of leca, mainly just to keep the big stem chunks separated from the wet soil when I water it. But anyway, it showed up with this huge chunk of a stem and 2 leaves on it, and one of them was a half moon, half variegated. Within like a couple of weeks of it arriving, the white part of the variegated leaf totally crisped up, so I ended up trimming it off. I potted it into leca, rigged a weird contraption for it. Anyway, it was very fragile and was really worried that if it died, there would be no good way to revive it. It has such a thick stem, and one of the things about Thaumatophyllums in general is that they're pretty difficult to propagate, unlike philodendrons, which you can just take cuttings of. Most of them you can just cut up and they propagate pretty easily, at least the vining ones. These are compact growing plants. It's kind of difficult to figure out where to propagate them and how to cut them in a way that allows you to not kill off large portions of the plant. So this plant, having only like 2 leaves on it, there was no way for me to propagate it. I just didn't want to mess with it because I didn't want to kill it by accident. So I eventually got fed up after I realized that I'd had this plant for a full year and it had not grown a single new leaf. But there was a big petiolar sheath sticking up that had been there the entire time I had the plant, that was green. Everything looked healthy. It was a big, thick sheath. I decided to try to crack it open. Just take my fingernail and slide it down the little slit that I found in the side of the petiolar sheath. So I busted it open a little bit, and then a couple days later, the entire thing started to turn really brown, the inside of the petiolar sheath. It had been looking green and fine for literally a year, and then I messed with it and it started to die off. So I was like freaking out. So then I decided that I was gonna just completely bust open that sheath and see what was going on inside of there, because it was gonna die anyway. So carefully, I peeled it open, and inside was a totally brown but complete leaf in there that must have been incubating for a complete year inside this plant. So I actually painstakingly unraveled the leaf and I pressed it, and I have it. I pressed it and I kept it because it was so crazy to me that it stayed rolled up inside the sheath for a year, for over a year, and it was still somehow not mush, but intact as a leaf like this. So yeah, I took this leaf out, pressed it, and then literally within a couple of days, another new leaf emerged. And since then, this was like, I don't know, maybe less than 2 months ago, since then it's grown 3 whole new leaves. So I guess it turns out that I just really needed to help the plant out and to open up that sheath. If you're in a similar situation, I would encourage you to just open up the leaf sheath and see if you can kickstart some growth on your plant, because I really didn't think that was gonna work, but that's what ended up doing the trick for this plant to get it growing again. I've started to see these in tissue culture, so hopefully they'll be able to be on the market for kind of an affordable price. I paid a couple $100s for this plant. I paid a lot for it, and so I was really worried that it was gonna die, and now I'm so happy that it's producing some actual variegated foliage. The first new leaf that came out was this one, and then after that, this leaf came out that had a bunch of variegation. And then right now, this leaf right here just finished unraveling like yesterday, so it's still very juvenile. And what I wanna do is a kind of sad plant chore. I need to cut off this one leaf. So this is one of the original leaves that came on the plant, and it has had these little suspicious spots on it the entire time. And they have increased in number, and they spread to the other leaf that has since departed. I would normally have cut this leaf off of any other plant, but the fact that it was only one of 2 leaves on this plant for so long, I had to leave it on there for the plant to use it for energy. So this leaf was basically doing all of the work, keeping this plant alive until it was able to produce these. But this bottom leaf is covered in spots, and it's gotta go. I don't know exactly what it is, and for leaf spot diseases, there's actually no way to know exactly what you're dealing with unless you send in samples to a lab and get it actually tested. Like if you have a cold and you have a runny nose and a headache and a stomach ache and other certain symptoms, you don't know exactly what strain of bacteria is causing your sickness. You don't even know if you've got bronchitis or the flu. You don't really know what it is until you get tested. Same kind of thing with plants. When you see leaf spots, those are really just like a symptom. So all we can do is make educated guesses, but a lot of times the best option is to just cut off a leaf if it looks questionable. So I'm not sure what it is, but I don't want it around on my plant leaves, so we're gonna cut it off. Oh, hi Phineas. Come here. Say hi to everyone. Here's Finn, he says hi. Okay, so I've got some isopropyl alcohol and a paper towel that I'm gonna use to clean where I'm gonna cut. This is something that we do like to help prevent infection. This is like when you go and get a shot, they swab you with alcohol first. Just make sure that if there is anything that could potentially cause infection, it's just not around when we puncture into our insides. Any measures that we can take to be a little bit safer and try to prevent the spread of disease in ways that are just pretty easy, like swabbing with alcohol, we're gonna take that option. It would probably be better even to use a little bit of bleach, but I don't think that we need to be that intense about it. I think it should be fine. I'm so nervous to cut the leaf off. Okay, we're gonna do it. Thank you, leaf, for your amazing service. You're now endangering the rest of the plant. Gotta go. Ah! Okay, the deed is done. All right, now that the deed is done, I feel great about it. Okay, and now I want to talk about this kind of unfortunate plant. So this is a Tenanthe burl marxii that I got from Home Depot, I don't know, like a couple months ago, and it was a really, really full plant, and it's still quite full, but I had a little accident with it. I have this bathroom down here that I don't use the shower in regularly, and so I use it sort of like a plant watering slash like closet. Like right now I've got all of my soil supplies in there, and I usually keep them in that bathtub, and then I keep the shower curtain closed. And I put this plant in the bathtub to water it, and then I forgot about it for like over a week behind the closed curtain, and it sat soaking wet in my shower for days and days in the complete dark pretty much. So I had a whole bunch of leaves die off, unfortunately. That happened, I don't know, like a couple weeks ago, and I just like haven't taken care of this plant since. I kind of thought that I doomed the entire thing to death, but it actually has continued to grow and has perked back up and is kind of looking okay. So I want to prune off all of the dead leaves and just get this plant looking good again. When I bought this plant, I announced that I was going to repot it and separate it into a whole bunch of different plants, but actually before my incident where I subjected it to an unnecessary wet and dark near-death experience, it was doing really well in its small pot as a very, very, very full plant. So I just want to clean it up, get it looking cute again, kind of repot it back into its existing pot, just because I think that I did a little bit of damage to the roots. I also have behind me, I'm going to grab it, just behind the fruit tree over there, which we're gonna talk about. I've got this Marantaceae silver band back here, which I got from the clearance section at Lowe's, and I thought maybe it had root rot when I brought it home, but I noticed within a couple days that it started to perk up. Now it's grown a bunch of new leaves, and it also has had a bunch of die off and has got a bunch of yucky stuff in the pot. So for both of these two prayer plants, I want to kind of just spruce them up a little bit. I also want to talk a little bit about prayer plants and the mechanism of action behind what makes them pray. So Marantas, Tenanthes, Stromanthes, Calatheas, all of those plants get broadly referred to as the prayer plants, and that is because they have this prayer action that they do at night. Their leaves all point upwards to the sky, and it's sort of like they're putting their hands together to pray. And then during the daytime, the plant sits open. And a lot of the prayer plants have this beautiful, beautiful striking foliage with a pattern on one side, and many of them have a reddish or purplish underside on the back. And one of the coolest things about this family of plants, the Marantaceae, is that they have this duality where they have this beautiful striking foliage during the daytime, and then at night they show you another side, literally another side of them, and it creates this stunning effect. And in all of the plant shops that I've worked at, actually, the owners have specified that they like putting the big prayer plants on shelves high up so that you can see the underside of the leaves, and it really tends to draw customers' attention. So these are a really, really, really cool, beautiful prayer plants. I love them. All right, this is looking a lot better now. We're gonna pop it out of the pot. Okay, so I've got some coco coir that I already moistened that came in a condensed brick, plus some perlite that I'm gonna use. Whoa. This needs a bigger pot. Oh my gosh. Wow, this is a beautiful root basket. I feel sad to be destroying it, but the plant will ultimately be happier in the end. All right, I went and got a slightly larger pot. Okay, hooray, this is looking much better now. We're gonna do the same thing with this plant now. Okay, so I was gonna repot this one, but I just pulled it out and it doesn't have a whole lot of roots. So I think I'm gonna actually just leave this guy alone and just prune it up a little bit, because I think I mentioned that I got this on clearance and it was kind of rotting. So it seems like it's growing some new roots down there and they look kind of healthy, but I don't wanna mess it up. So I'm gonna just leave it alone and prune off the dead foliage. All right, the praying motion that prayer plants do is a physiological response to a change in the availability of certain wavelengths of light. And that physiological response is a phenomenon known as nyctinasty or photonasty. And so you can call it nyctonastic or photonastic movement. And the root of those words, so photo in photonasty means light, and nyctonasty, the nick in there means darkness. Nastic or nasty is a suffix that gets used in plant biology to refer to a certain type of like non-specified motion or change in plant parts that is generally opposed to like growth, like phototropism is growing towards the light. Photonastic movement is movement that happens in response to light, but it's not necessarily growth. In fact, it's not growth. Anyway, the process of the way that these leaves move up and down is generally referred to as nyctinasty, and that means that it is a response to nighttime or a lack of light that is just sort of a non-specific movement. So on prayer plants, this movement happens because on the petiole, which is the technical term for the leaf stem, on the petiole at the base of the leaf, there is an area called the pulvinus, which is present on prayer plants, but is not present on every type of plant. And this pulvinus contains these cells that have the physiological mechanism that creates the change in the plant's posture. All plants are subject to a force called turgor pressure, which refers to the amount of pressure within an individual cell of a plant. So every living thing is made up of cells, millions and millions of cells, and on plants, they are rigid, and part of their rigidity is due to, well, first of all, their cell wall, but also their turgor pressure. Organelles are like the organs of the cell that do different things. And on plants, there is a very large organelle called the vacuole, which holds liquids, mainly water, but whatever fluids the plant is holding is typically stored within this, essentially a thing like a balloon, inside of every single plant cell. And when the plant is well hydrated, that balloon is full, and it creates pressure from within each cell, and it makes each plant cell stiff and rigid. And when you have a whole plant that's full of stiff cells, you have a plant that stands at attention and it looks hydrated. When a plant is very thirsty and starts to get really droopy, what's happening is that the turgor pressure is really low in the plant, and that means that essentially the little balloon-like structure within each cell is getting deflated, and that allows each cell to be slightly more deflated. And then when you have millions of those all stacked together, you get a plant that looks a little bit droopy. So that's what happens for all plants when they drink water. They have a ability to sort of change their rigidity, and that is their turgor pressure changing. Well, on prayer plants, their nyctonastic response, that is their change of posture in response to light or lack thereof, is due to a change in turgor pressure that occurs in just one specific area of the plant. And so on each leaf, you've got the leaf and you've got the petiole, which is the leaf stem. On the petiole at the base of the leaf, on prayer plants, there's an area of cells called the pulvinus. And that area is full of cells that are affected by the chemical response that happens due to a change in light, and it changes the turgor pressure in the cells of those areas, basically causing the leaves to change position based on how much pressure is being exerted in different parts of that particular anatomical region of the plant. So a lot of times in plants, when you have this turgor pressure, which accounts for the plant standing at attention, oftentimes if you let that turgor pressure get too low and the plant get too droopy too many times, a lot of times the plants can't fully recover from that. It's kind of like once you crimple up a piece of paper, you can smooth it back out, but you're never gonna totally get out the wrinkles. With plants, that same thing happens sometimes, where if you let the plant get too droopy too many times, you can result in a plant that can't really stand all the way back up at attention. One of the unique things about this pulvinous area on the prayer plants is that they are able to enact their turgor pressure change over and over and over again, because there is this specific anatomical region that allows the plants to do it. So anyway, I think that's super cool, and thought you would like to know a little bit about how prayer plants work and what causes their movement. Okay, so this little beautiful tree that I've got growing right here is an improved Meyer lemon tree. I'm so excited to have it. I got this from Costco and it was only $30. Citrus limon. The improved Meyer lemon is a variety of lemon tree that is probably best suited for growing indoors. The improved part of the improved Meyer lemon refers to the fact that it's been cultivated specifically to be very resistant to certain types of root diseases. So citrus plants tend to be very susceptible to all types of root rot and disease. And a lot of times plants that are susceptible to disease are even more susceptible to it in indoor growing conditions. So the improved Meyer lemon is a really good option for indoor citrus growing. I've got a grow light directly on it a couple days ago. The most tragic thing happened, you guys. I've been growing this Meyer lemon tree for a couple months now, and it had a lemon developing on it that was getting very sizable, and I accidentally knocked it off the tree. I ripped it off by accident and was so upset. But it's okay. It's growing more lemons. It's got more of them on there. It's got small ones. The Meyer lemon tree pretty much grows fruit like year round. So it's not like I missed my chance this year or anything like that. But I was moving plants around over here and I heard this thud, and it was the sound of this lemon falling off the tree. I'm so sad. But it's growing more already. It's got 3 visible from right here. I think there might be more down below, but you can see these little lemons forming on there, so that's super exciting. This plant has been growing for me like a champ underneath this grow light. I actually have 2 of them that I got from Costco. I have another one that I'm going to show you in a second, and I have them both growing underneath Soltech Solutions grow lights. So I'm super excited to announce I have partnered with them and have some of their grow lights in my collection now. They were the first company to create an aesthetic grow light. If you haven't heard of Soltech Solutions, they kind of have a reputation of being the nicest, fanciest grow light you can possibly get for your collection. I'm when I see someone with Soltech Solutions lights, I'm they've made it. They've made it. So I can count myself in now. They've been around for a while and they've been wanting to work with me, and full disclosure, I didn't want to work with them because their products are really expensive, and I just kind of didn't want to recommend such an expensive grow light. And I never really gave them a chance. And recently they reached out to me again, and I figured, you know what, why not? I'm gonna give them a try. And they are great, you guys. I mean, they're really great. I've been missing out. The Soltech light bulb is really powerful, and I am actually really surprised at how well it's been maintaining this lemon tree. I didn't think that it would be able to flower and fruit underneath a grow light this far away from a window, but it's been totally sufficient. I am using their Vita grow light bulb on this plant, and it's been doing really well under this light for months. I mean, it grew this big lemon that only fell off because I messed it up and knocked the lemon off by accident, but it has been growing under this grow light about 12 feet away from an east-facing window, fully powered up. This is a dimmable grow light, and I have it on full blast every day. I leave it on for 12 hours. So I've got it only about I don't know, it's a little over a foot away from the top of the plant. So for grow lights, one of the most important things about them is that you have to put them pretty close to the plant, especially if it's a plant like a citrus tree, which wants to grow outside in full sun. So you gotta keep the light pretty close down to the plant. I have this setup here with this black cage and a black lamp, and then I got the white bulb on the inside, and it's invisible. When I look at it, you can't really see that there's a grow light here. I mean, I'm astounded. These bulbs are $75 a piece. They're meant to last like 17 years or something crazy like that. So I feel like they are a little bit pricey, but it's totally worth it because they're gonna last a really, really long time, and they are so high powered, and they're designed with a very elaborate heat sink on the outside. That texture that you see helps them be really high powered without causing as much of a potential fire risk as some of the other light bulbs that I've personally used. I think they're really well designed. I'm loving having these in my collection. I feel really fancy now. I've got like the bougie grow lights. You can use my discount code, which is really big plant, at checkout for 15% off any of your Soltech Solutions products. I'm really excited to be working with them. I do earn commission if you guys use my code, and I am very grateful to anybody who does. Let me show you the other one too. I've got it in an even darker spot. This is probably one of the darkest spots in my entire house, and I have a lemon tree growing here. And it's pretty remarkable. This one is in a nice lamp. It just goes on and off like this, and I keep it on the whole time I'm awake. I probably should just buy a timer to make it easier for myself. But this way I come through and I check on the plant every day, and it's doing really well. Before I put the grow light here, I was growing a ZZ plant and a snake plant in this location. Those are some of the lowest light requirement houseplants you can get. This is one of the highest light demand plants you can grow inside a citrus tree. So this light I've got further away just because the aesthetic in this area. I didn't want the light to be super low down, but I have noticed a difference. This tree has not flowered since I've put it in this location, so maybe I need to lower the light bulb a little bit. There are also two different plants. This one is much smaller and much more juvenile, so it's possible that that's the reason why it hasn't flowered yet, or it's just dark in this location here. But it's not like it's dying off. It has put out some new growth since I've had it here, and I'm loving it. This is my dining room area that, like, when I moved into this house, I intended this room to have like all of my plants in it because it's got a lot of windows around. And this also is the room that has the door that is the main access to my backyard. And I just hadn't anticipated the amount of insects that would find their way into this room. And I think it's pretty normal, like living at ground level and having a yard outside and this being the first floor. There are little bugs that get in this room. And so as a result, most of the plants that I've got in here now are plants that have a very thick cuticle, the outermost layer of like a waxy substance that protects the plants. So I have ended up having this strategy in this room where I have mostly plants that grow these very thick leaves. You know, I've been meaning to show this thing. Oh my gosh, I've got this really gross thing that I've been keeping around because I want to show it to you guys. I can finally get rid of it. Okay, these are some snake plant propagations. One of these leaves shriveled up, and it's just been sitting disgusting like this in my kitchen for weeks and weeks. Point is, on snake plants, the cuticle is crazy thick. I mean, like really, really impressively thick. So thick that the leaf can rot entirely on the inside and then contain all of the moisture. Do you see how disgusting this is? There's liquid inside of here. Do you see the water level going up and down when I squeeze it? It's not spilling this water out because the cuticle on this leaf, the outer layer of the leaf, is so thick and non-permeable that it's just containing all of the rotten stuff fully inside of this like leaf bag. How impressive their cuticle layer is, that it just contains everything like this. You can even hear how it kind of sounds papery. I mean, you can hear the texture of it. It's not mushy. It's got this outer layer that's like crinkly, and it is such a good defense. Snake plants are native to Africa and to really, really warm environments. So this cuticle is a really good defensive mechanism that prevents too much moisture from transpiring. And this is one of the things that's responsible for how snake plants can survive in the conditions that they do and how they can go for so long between waterings. They've got this cuticle that stops them from losing any moisture from their leaves. So yeah, super disgusting, but also really, really cool. So how awesome is that? Snake plants are really, really amazing. Okay, I'm gonna throw this out. This is so gross. I got a new huge fiddle leaf fig tree that I wanna show you guys that I bought actually several months ago. I wanted to see if I could care for it before showing you the new plant, Ficus Alii, and it's got literally some of the biggest leaves I've ever seen on an indoor specimen of one of these for sale. And I saw this particular tree at Home Depot and I just had to buy it. It was like, I think it was like $60 or something like that, but this leaf is so big, I'm gonna have to measure it and show you, but you can probably even see on this one, which is much smaller than the big leaf on this plant, just how huge it is in comparison to me standing here next to it. So yeah, I've got this fiddle leaf fig tree here. I did a silly thing. I bought this plant on an impulse with no idea of where I was gonna put it, which tends to be the way that I buy plants, which I try to advise people against having that kind of impulsive purchase behavior, because then it makes you regret getting a plant and then you end up with this big plant that's dying because you don't have a spot for it. But anyway, I've got it here in front of this window and it seems to be doing okay. It's leaning. And then over here, I've got my Ficus Alii. I hadn't intended on keeping it in this spot, but I had it in like a slightly lower light location, still by a window, but not as bright as this. And it was losing lots of leaves and it continued losing leaves and then it kept losing leaves. So I figured it needed way more light. I thought it could acclimate to the darker spot, but maybe it just needs a little bit longer in that transition. I got this from Home Depot, but the fact that it kept losing leaves in like a relatively decently bright location told me that it must have come from a really, really bright growing condition before I bought it. As soon as I put it over here where it's getting like a lot more light, it's got floor to ceiling window here next to my backyard entryway, and it is doing a lot better now and has stopped the downpour of yellow leaves. It's a little bit in the way in this spot, not gonna lie. I'm hoping eventually I'll be able to transition it out of this location, but it might live here until the winter where it like, I don't know, as I say that actually I probably should move it before the winter, before the daylight hours recede, right? Maybe I need to get a grow light for it. Maybe I'll get another Soltech Solutions light to put on this Ficus Alii. Who knows? But anyway, for now it's been living here. Okay, and then I want to pot up this little avocado propagation. I have probably done this about 1,000,000 times. Okay, that's an exaggeration, but I've done this a lot of times and I've like never actually grown this into a full avocado tree. You can propagate avocados from just the seed. It's pretty easy. You just have to keep the seed wet on the bottom side for a while. And sometimes it actually like helps if the thing is split open already. I usually will propagate avocados if I notice that it's already growing a little bit of a root from the seed. I'll just stick it in water. And this was one like that, and I somehow managed to keep it wet for long enough that it actually sprouted. Most of the time, I start these avocado seeds and then I let them get dry for too long and then forget about them and just toss them because I eat so many avocados. Avocado trees tend to be pretty susceptible to various types of root diseases and root rot, so usually they're commercially grown as a grafted plant where they're grafted onto a different type of rootstock. So I don't really blame myself for not successfully being able to keep these. They don't really forgive you if you let them get too dry. I've grown fond of this. Maybe it's because I've got it in this tiny little hedgehog planter, but I'm gonna pot it into some soil. Yay! And then I'll just pot it with the avocado seeds sitting right on top of the soil line. All right, and this avocado grew so tall because I actually just had this sitting next to my sink for a long time where it was surrounded by other plants and kind of like in the dark, so it got very etiolated, which means that it was like stretched out, reaching towards the light. And then I moved it in front of a window and the leaves instantly started getting bigger, and then it dried up and got droopy, which is why it's still droopy now. And now here we are, I decided to pot it up. So Normally, I will leave the seed on until it falls off by itself. You can pull it off, but sometimes it does damage to the stem. Also, if it's still attached, I like to leave it on there to serve its purpose as a initial source of nutrients for the plant. This is a huge seed. It's got a lot of great nutrients jam-packed in there. So the baby plant is going to draw from that seed until it falls off. But you don't want to bury it underground because then it can start to rot sometimes. So just leave it right on the top. And I'm going to put a little bit of slow release fertilizer in there. This is just some Osmocote. It doesn't come in this container. I put it in here for my own ease of use. I usually buy it in like a huge bag. So yeah, I'll just put a couple of those in there. And then I will water it. And now we are on our way to having an avocado tree. Okay, and then I have to show you something completely amazing. Do you see this? This is my Hoya compacta, and it is flowering for the first time ever. This is the first time I've ever seen blooms on one of these Hoyas in my collection, and it is beautiful and so full and perfect and round and amazing. I just wanted to show this to you. It's so beautiful. It's got these fuzzy blooms, and look at what a beautiful umbel this is. So the name of a group of Hoya flowers is an umbel, which means like it shares a root with umbrella. It's like a little dome. Do you see how perfect this is from like every angle? Anyway, I'm super obsessed with this. I love this set of flowers on here. This is my original Hoya compacta. I got it as an itty bitty little, like a 2-inch chunk, and boy, these are slow growers. The fact that it created this perfect round of flowers is just amazing to me. I love it. Really, really excited to have this and to be able to show this to you now. I think the secret is way more light, just so much more light. I mean, people always say that, but I've got these growing in a west window where they get hours and hours of direct sun all day long. It's hot here. It doesn't smell like particularly awesome. Like I've smelled better smelling Hoya flowers than this, but it is nice. It smells a little bit beefy though. It's got like a little bit of a musky smell. This flower actually opened up almost a week ago now, and it's been hanging on really, really nicely. So yeah, I'm thrilled about it. It's like a microphone when I hold it like this. I'm Caitlin from Really Big Plant, and for today's video, I will be using this Hoya microphone. I love it. Hooray! This has been a fun video. Got some pruning done, took care of some stuff, got to show you my little area over here. There's like a couple of hot spots in my house that I spend a lot of time in and rearrange, and this is one of those areas. I'm excited to show you the progress of my lemons as they continue to grow. Thank you so, so much for watching. I hope that you are having a fantastic planty week and that your plants are bringing you joy, and I hope to catch you in the next one. Bye!